Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Recovery Talks, the podcast. I'm really honored to have Angel Nichols today. And is it okay if I call you Angel?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool? Okay, cool. Because, you know, it could be Angelica, right?
It could be.
Right. So we talked about that a minute ago. So
Yeah.
how long has it not been Angelica?
Most of my life.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like it as a kid.
Really?
It took time to grow into it. Yeah.
Did kids make fun of you and stuff when you said Angelica?
They didn't.
Really?
No.
Because I wouldn't have made fun of you either. Because I would be like, "Whoa, you're gonna do me."
Yeah.
So, you've got a lot of really interesting letters after your name. You know, I did some research on you. I went a searching, right? So LPN, I think I'm familiar with. CDCA, I'm familiar with, but OCPS.
Ohio Certified Peer Supporter.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep, all of them.
So OCPS. So my certification is Ohio Peer Supporter. So it's a little bit different. So I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but I do know that there's a whole bunch of different classifications of peer supporter coming out now. Family-based, adult-based, and then, right? So, yeah, I just saw yesterday a presentation on that. So you are clinical coordinator for ARC Recovery Services, right? And ARC stands for Addiction Recovery in Christ.
It does.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I know a thing. I know a thing, right?
Yeah, you're doing well. You're doing well.
I know a thing, you know. For our listeners out there and our viewers out there that may not be familiar with ARC, ARC is a community organization that offers recovery services. And currently you have two recovery houses for men. Right? And one brand new recovery house is for women. They have capacity for 19 people.
Yes.
Right? Are they always full?
They stay pretty consistent.
Right.
They stay pretty consistent.
Right. So what's the average time that people stay there usually?
The program that we have is 6 months to 1 year, but like I went through the program, I was there for 14 months. I've had somebody stay for 18 months.
Right.
It really is individualized.
That's a great segue.
Yeah.
So eventually you ended up there, right?
I did.
Right. So obviously we are here because we are both people who are in recovery from substance use disorder, or at least I am. And, you know, I've heard your story a couple different places, but I think it would be great for our listeners if maybe we talked about, you know, how it is that we come here to talk. How did Angel get here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You want me to start?
You go.
Okay.
You start.
Well, I'm kind of like your typical concoction of a, ex-drug addict. I was born in Detroit, Michigan to heroin addicts, in a trailer. It literally sounds like the opening to, I always goof around and say like 8 Mile or whatever, to just a bad movie, just a bad movie. Not that 8 Mile was bad, to whoever, that might offend somebody, but, both heroin addicts, born into poverty, had a bunch of identity issues growing up, meaning like I had to go to school in my grandparents' neighborhood, which was a primarily white neighborhood, middle class. I was living in the slums with my mom and my dad, and so I'd have to go into school. I'd have to lie about where I was from. I always felt like I stuck out. Or people knew that I was lying. So from the beginning, I had to lie about who I was, which created like this huge ripple effect in everything that I ever did or I laid my hands to or I even thought about. It was like walking around hiding this constant secret, not allowing the world to see who I really was.
So you really felt different than most kids.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I even think like when I look back in hindsight, I swear, and I'm still going to hold steady to this, and I know that we use words in the room like terminally unique, but I do believe that I was different, and I do believe that I thought different, and I still think that way, you know what I mean? And I hope that everybody thinks that way. You are different and unique and set apart for a reason and a purpose.
I can definitely remember growing up and seeing other kids' houses and thinking, mine's not like that.
No, we were the weirdos on the block. You know what I mean? My parents were punks, and that wasn't, a big thing. My dad literally looked like, my stepdad looked like if Howard Stern and Aerosmith had a baby. That was their love child, was my dad.
Lots of classic rock?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, no, just very, very, very punk, very punk. Same thing with my mom, bracelets all the way from here to, Timbuktu, upper arm, and nasal piercings and all kinds of cool stuff. They were, now in hindsight, looking back, my parents were edgy. You know what I mean? But at the time, they stuck out. And again, that created the same type of issue in me. I didn't want to be seen. And here I have these parents, when they were clean, they were good. They were good. They were, activists in the community. They did things, so it was always out in front and, 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 here I am as a kid, like I just don't want to be seen.
So drugs were around all the time.
Drugs were always around.
Right.
They were just, you know, my definition of clean and sober now was not my mother's definition.
Right.
You know, they were
Right.
still okay with, you know, dipping and dabbing and thinking that was all right. You know,
Right.
they'd
A little
have,
bit of weed is okay.
yeah, she would
Right.
smoke weed. They would
Yeah.
drink.
Cigarette smokers?
Oh God, yeah, cigarette
Yeah,
smokers
right,
for
right.
sure.
You think
Yeah.
that's the gateway drug?
Do I?
Uh-huh. Nicotine?
No, and this is the reason why I say this. I mean, it could be, but for myself, the first time I ever got outside of myself was, do you remember the choking game? Where I was doing that in my bedroom by myself. And for me, that was the first time that I experienced any type of high whatsoever.
Right.
You know, and I had to have been in like the second grade.
Right.
You know, maybe even before that, I can't recall.
Yep.
But I do know that that was the first time that I had ever indulged in anything that would make me feel outside.
Mine was food. You know what I mean? Food, yeah, because I felt comfortable with food. Food was like, oh, if I could just get more of that food, what's going to have for dinner? What's for lunch? For dinner? What's
Yep.
You know, because I knew that that would be a place where there'd be safety and comfort.
Yeah,
Food.
absolutely. Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
Yep.
I should. Yeah, because I know I used to sneak it, all kinds of weird little things,
Right?
you know?
Fight over the cereal box. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Take it, hide it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all kinds
absolutely.
of weird little stuff.
So that was the first start.
Yeah.
What was the next steps?
Is getting high? So my parents, they were all like artists and musicians and, you know, you name it. So we
Right.
always had really, really big parties. My Aunt Kat and Aunt Rachel, we had this party and there was like some people that they flew in from England and they were all partying and they would smoke like these huge blunts, which really, like, looking back now, I'm like, I don't know what they were. They were mixed with
Yeah,
tobacco.
what's up with the English guys, man?
I don't know. It was a whole different ball game,
It wasn't
dude.
this. It was like this.
Yeah, it was
Like,
so
why do you need
weird.
that?
It was so
Really?
weird. But,
Right,
you know, being
yeah.
a kid and being exposed to it, it was all okay.
Right.
You know,
Because
and
mom and dad are doing it.
Mom
so
and dad were doing it.
It must be all right.
Yeah, and it was always okay. And
Right.
their background was Slavic. You know, my grandparents
Mm-hmm.
were Ukrainian. You know, so drinking was not a big deal. You know, it wasn't frowned upon. You could be
Culturally.
11 years old and,
Yep.
and if you had a upset
Yep.
stomach, take a shot of whiskey or
Yeah,
brandy or
it's all
whatever it
cultural.
was.
Yep, absolutely.
So I remember my Aunt Kat and Aunt Rachel being like, "Oh, you know, there's beer in the fridge. Go ahead and take one," and I did. And me and my friend, we went behind the garage. And, you know, in hindsight, looking back now, I remember knowing at that point something was so much more different in me than it was in her. She took a drink and she was okay with that. I took a drink and I drank another. You know, at 11 years old, smashed out of my mind at this party, you know, with parents and other adults walking around, and nobody batted an eye. It was not a big deal. You know, here's a kid running around with a Budweiser and a bottle in her hand, you know what I mean? And nobody's saying anything, you know? So that was definitely, it blew up since then, you know? I was 11 years old at the time when I first drank. I was younger than that when I smoked cigarettes, but that was also the first year that I smoked weed. And I remember with my brother and his friends, and I was so high, I'll never forget that I was hallucinating. You know what I mean? 11 years old, so high, hallucinating, even having a moment in the mirror with myself in complete clarity. I remember looking in the mirror and asking myself, what are you doing? You know, at 11 years old, to be able to have a conscious thought stream through all of that influence that I was under and be able to have a conversation and say, what are you doing?
Right. Did you end up parenting yourself a lot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were like, you know, my parents allowed us to do whatever they
know.
thought. And I was
know.
always like the smart kid, the powerful kid, the
Right.
strong kid,
Right.
you know, the independent
Right.
one, which gave me freedom to do anything that I ever wanted.
Right. Right.
You know, when really in all reality, why I was doing those things, I just wanted somebody to pull my brake.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Please
Yep.
pull my emergency
Yep.
brake, and
Set
nobody
up
ever
some boundaries.
did.
Give me a curb. Right. I
Yeah.
get it. I mean, you think that, in some ways, you think you got like the coolest parents ever. They let you do whatever
Yep.
you want. Yeah. And you see your friends like, oh, you can't. You can. I get to do that. But then you think, I wish somebody was telling me I
Yep.
had to go to bed.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wish somebody was telling me
Yeah.
this or that.
Oh,
Right?
all my friends thought my parents were cool.
Right. So
Yeah.
they thought we were the coolest parents ever. But in reality, we were parenting ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep. I
Yeah, it was
gotcha.
awful.
Can relate
It was
to
awful
that.
experience.
So how did it progress?
It got worse when we moved down here. So my mom started a business that was not it was not legal, basically. She ended up getting raided. We moved down here, and that separation from everything that I'd ever known had created this disruption in my spirit where I didn't know what to do, and I felt like I was flailing.
Right.
When I ended up going to school here, I met people, and it was just off and running, because that's when, like, smoking blunts and weeds and weed
Right.
kind of was very, 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 very trendy. It was
Right.
not a big deal.
Right.
And drinking, and it was the most worst drink ever. Like, I can remember things like Mad Dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't even know what is even in that. You know what I mean? So,
It's crazy you mentioned that, because I think in a lot of ways, a lot of kids, when they get transferred from one school to the other, they have this moment where they get integrated and they know immediately they're the new kid, they don't belong. And sometimes the only kids that will reach out to them are the kids that are like the bad kids, right? Because they see you and they relate to you. Hey, you're an outsider, I'm an outsider, come on. Come on, join this tribe, right?
Yeah.
And I see that happening with some kids, especially when they get, disrupted, they get planted into a new system if they're not on board or not integrated, because it's tough.
Oh,
And-
yeah,
and the
you'll
next thing
gravitate,
The next thing you know, somebody comes up to you and they're friendly, and you're gone. You're just gone, whatever that group is. Anybody like me, you know what I mean? And I'm with your group.
yeah, absolutely.
So-
absolutely.
At this point, are consequences showing up in your life as far as using?
No.
Not yet.
No, and even I wouldn't have recognized them as consequences then. I stopped really kind of going to school. I did what I wanted, because there wasn't any parental consequences.
Right.
I didn't know about the future life consequences that would create.
How can you?
You know what I mean?
How can you? Right.
So no, to me, it was, my life was fine. It was okay. I was doing
Right.
what I wanted.
Right.
My soul, on the other hand, was in turmoil.
Empty.
It was in turmoil.
Right.
It was excruciating pain for me all the time.
Right. What we're talking about, I think, is and we're talking about recovery at this point. I'm sure we're going down the path. I mean, for all of us who are in recovery, we talk about a biopsychosocial cure, right? I mean, the bio, it's not that difficult to understand what happens to your body when you become a addiction. The social, that's a whole complete thing. Physical, but that spiritual component.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you feel the emptiness. You don't feel like you belong anywhere.
Yeah.
You don't feel like, you can do it on your own. You don't know what to do to ask for help. You don't know where to go. For me, I grew up in a home where there was this really strong faith, right? But it was kind of like hey, we got to go to church, right? And then it was like, well, it's Sunday, we got to, but there wasn't, I think it was more for show. You know what I mean? But it was what everybody did in the neighborhood, because it was that neighborhood where there was a school and people went to that and go to the church. And so I don't know. I remember very clearly early on having a sense of faithfulness, having a sense of a higher power, and then it went away. You know what I mean? And it was gone for a long time.
Yes.
And you just sense, well, where is that? And we're going to get into that a little bit. But where was the moment for you where you said, uh-oh, I may be in trouble here. I may be in trouble, because obviously things progress. I mean, our stories are probably a lot alike as far as it continues, and maybe consequences start showing up a little bit. Oh, okay. And then all of a sudden there's a moment where you go, I'm in trouble. Something just happened. Was there that moment for you?
I think it was like a series of moments, but I got so good at hardening my heart towards those moments. The one that sticks out the most to me is like towards the very, very, very end, of my addiction and in my darkest days. I remember coming to a place within myself that I knew that if I didn't stop, I was going to get killed.
Right.
I was going to get killed. The people that I was running with were scary.
Yeah.
They were scary people.
Yeah.
One of them's in prison now for shooting somebody in the face.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Take a look around, you go, what am I doing here?
Yeah. And
what am I doing
it
with these
did.
people? Right.
Yeah, that's how I was. I was in such a dark place, but I knew,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like even in my last moments where, you have this cry out to God to listen. You do it or I will.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I meant it. And I know I meant it. Like, it makes me want to cry when I think about it because of the total destruction that I was in.
I feel it right now across this room.
Yeah.
I feel it, that moment. Because those of us that have been through that moment, we can all describe sometimes several moments where we can say, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't ever believe that it was that bad in that moment. And you look around, for me, waking up in the morning and knowing I can't go to work again. again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so at some point, you have to make that turning point decision, right? When did it happen for you? What was it?
Mine was in the form of an APD officer.
Okay, there you go, right?
Like, as much as I wanted to stop, it was like my body was in autopilot,
Yeah, the midbrain takes over.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm screaming on the inside, like,
That frontal
stop.
cortex has stopped.
Yeah,
Not thinking,
and
you know what I
it
mean?
just,
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah, you can't.
And, and God knew better, and he showed up and arrested me, and I went to jail.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for, I think, like a total of 8 months.
Right.
They put me in the CBCF program.
Right.
But I had so many experiences while I was in jail. I mean, I knew towards the end, like, I had this anticipation in my spirit. I
Something's
knew
gonna happen.
something was going to happen,
Something's
that
gonna
my
happen.
rescue was coming. How
Right.
it was going to come, I
Right.
didn't know.
Well, that's amazing.
So when I got to jail, I knew that was the answer that I had been seeking, that had finally came. So I did. I took the opportunity and the space and just drowned myself in everything that I could.
So how did you get connected with ARC? I may be fast forwarding a
no,
little
that's
bit
okay.
past some important parts of your story,
Sure.
but so eventually you come into contact with this organization.
I
right?
did, in
It's a game
CBCF.
changer. Game changer. Right?
Yeah, 100%. The
Game
100%. They were a completely different clan of people. Like,
Right.
they were so. My story is like growing up, I wanted nothing to do with Jesus. If you said the
Right.
name, I would cringe.
Oh,
You know what I mean? I wanted nothing to do with it.
right.
But
Why do you think that was? I mean, because I've thought a lot about that. You know what I mean? And even today, because I deal with a lot of different people who do a lot of different things for recovery. And when we introduce people to a spiritual approach, which can be a lot of different ways. Mine's different than yours, but I think that at the apex of all of it, it's all about love and kindness and caring and warm-heartedness, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of it has to do with just bad actors, because a lot of the people that we met that may have been, involved in a spiritual approach to their life, we just looked up at them and, go, I'm not you.
Yeah.
I'm not you. I don't see me in you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there had to be a difference there for you in that moment.
Well, what ended up, so I told you when my parents were good, they were activists. So they were the ones that were protecting women as they were walking into abortion clinics, and unfortunately on the other side of that were the ones who were claiming that it was sin and it was murder and they were spitting on these young women. And I didn't understand, like something inside of me knew that wasn't right. And if God was love, that wasn't love.
Right.
And they would use the word Jesus. And I couldn't, I don't want no part of that.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. How is that? And for the people who may be listening to this podcast who may have different opinions, there's no disrespect going on
None.
here. We're just talking about the experiences that we have known as we have known them. What is real for us, our truth.
Yeah, it's just
and
my
I think
story.
that's what I encourage, no matter what it is, when you're talking about any faith-based approach, is you have to speak from your own truth.
Yeah.
That's it. And I sense that even some of them may have different approaches than I do. You can always sense when it's honest and authentic and it's warm-hearted.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really the difference.
Absolutely.
Or if it's mean-spirited, like, you got to do what I want you to do because you didn't do what I want you to do, you're bad.
Yes.
You're bad.
Yeah.
And I already felt bad enough. You know what I mean? I knew I wasn't like everybody else.
Oh, my God, right.
I didn't need anybody to tell me
please don't.
I was worse.
Right. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
please
Because
don't.
it hurt enough.
Yeah.
It hurt enough to me that I wasn't like your family. I didn't go to your schools. I didn't have a family dinner every night at 5 o'clock. I already felt bad enough.
Right.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't
Yeah.
make me feel worse. And I can remember very clearly those bad actors making me feel like, you know what, this can't be it.
Yeah.
This can't be it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to get into my autobiographical, church-based experiences, but I think it's pretty common that people can feel this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had a discovery moment.
Yeah. Oh, when Art came in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up meeting somebody through there, and they were like, "Oh, come to church with me." Her name's Alicia Casper. Actually, she used to go there. I'm getting ready to go see her in Florida. We're still friends. She still made
awesome.
it through the program. Yeah, it's fabulous. And I was experiencing all that the churches at CBCF had to offer within, and those were really cool. But when I went to Community of Christ, when I walked through the doors, you were talking about that voice that you heard earlier when we were having a conversation outside. something happened within me. It was like this familiar feeling of comfort and peace and love. And at the same time, I heard the word home. And I didn't know exactly what they meant, but I knew I was at peace with whatever was going to happen afterwards, you know. And the people that were there were just like me. You know, they were drug addicts, you know what I mean, in recovery, whether or not if it was from codependency, methamphetamines, alcoholism, you know what I mean, overeating,
Gambling,
it
sex,
didn't
food,
matter.
whatever.
Gambling, sex, food,
Doesn't
it did not matter. You know, I wasn't a leper. You know, I wasn't separate. You know, I belonged somewhere. And they were so welcoming and open and understood grace and love and mercy and compassion. And those were all of the things that I needed.
Right.
You know?
And when it all comes to the same thing, and, obviously, because we had a little discussion before we began where I said that I had grown up in a Christian family, and I study now, which I think, by the way, I think that the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth are just badass. Excuse my language, but I'm going to say it. I think they are. You know, kindness, taking care of others, you know, sharing, caring, taking care of the sick. You know, but for me today, where I'm at in my journey is I'm studying, you know, Buddhist teachings, and that has a lot to do with warm-heartedness and kindness and good intentions, right intentions, which I think they all meet. Again, they all meet at the same place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those of our listeners that may be getting uncomfortable with our discussion right now, right, RV, let me just say that, you know, there are a number of very credible agencies out there that do support faith-based initiatives. One of them is the, obviously, SAMHSA, which is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and its parent agency, the parent agency, the Department of Health and Human Services, has developed a program which is called the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, which integrates information from SAMHSA with faith-based communities. And currently they are funding over 800 agencies with grants across the United States.
Beautiful.
So don't tell me that that's not a way you can't work. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear that. And, you know, I think that one of the things we deal with when we talk about people in recovery, because you're a peer supporter, obviously you're much more than that. Because I work as a volunteer, you're really in there and really doing it. And I have such great respect for what you do. I mean, I'm on the fringes, just trying to catch an outlier every now and then, but you're really in deep. One of the things we talk about when we talk about faith-based initiatives and spiritualism is people have their own scripting, like you were talking about. They have their own, hey, don't know, oh, you're going to say the God word, whoa, you just lost me, dude, just lost me, dude. And, you know, and I try and tell them the story about a higher power, or I ask them a question. I've got a little funny parable, which our listeners have heard 100 times about the car. But, you know, I always want to say that if you don't believe in a higher power, just tell me, can you change the sunrise tomorrow?
Right.
Stop that rainstorm from coming in? Oh, so there might be a power that's greater than you. Maybe.
That's a good point.
You know,
that's a good point.
A little bit, right?
Yeah.
So don't tell me that there isn't. And I always ask people to say, look at what medical science understood 100 years ago versus what they understand now. So don't tell me that the impacts of a deeply spiritual tradition that is based in kindness and warm-heartedness and caring and love can't make a change and a difference in people's lives.
Right.
Don't tell me that. Because I don't buy. I don't buy. So obviously you hooked up with ARC.
Yes.
And just a little bit about ARC, you know, I mean, this is a really well-known organization in the city of Akron, Ohio. Phone number is 330-253-8803. And that's, if you're listening out there and you're feeling like this message resonates with you, please pick up the phone and make a call, because you're going to meet incredible people like Angel. And she's obviously now a clinical coordinator. That sounds like a lot of work, man.
Sounds fancy.
You know what I mean? Clinical coordinator, man. It's like, whoa. It sounds like, you know, a lot of people you got to be responsible for. Tell me what you do. What's your day like, you know?
Oh, it depends on the day.
Really, right? When people ask me, Michael Shannon, what do you do during the day? I'm like, I don't know. What person am I today? Today I'm podcaster boy. Tomorrow I'm executive consulting client. Tomorrow, after that, I'm like, oh, music guy. Oh, I got to get my stuff together. But I think that overreaching over all of that, no matter what we do, no matter how we do it, is a firmly rated a basis of saying we ain't going back to who we were and what we did. And
absolutely.
The way that we do it, you to a much greater degree than I do, is you're involved actively in helping people.
Oh, yeah.
That's the game changer. We talk on this podcast a lot about what the three things are. 3 things for me are don't use today. Well, I don't know how you do it. Find a way. Call me. Call you. Find a way. Number 2 is find that tribe of peer support. To me, the most powerful tool in getting sober and being in recovery is knowing there were other people that were just like me.
Yeah,
that I wasn't a bad person.
Yep.
I wasn't a bad person. That was a big one to me. And the third thing is once you get it, you give it away. You know, kind of what we're doing right now in our own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know if you want to go to some of this stuff, but you know, I'm gonna ask you to dig in a little bit about your faith.
Sure.
Okay, if that's okay.
Oh God, yes.
Okay, when you talk about the teachings that you studied, you know, what are some of the key ones that come up to you that you live by day? You know, I have mantras. I write them on a card. I have one actually in my book, which I forgot to bring out and set on the counter. I was going to be a really cool guy and have it right there, but I forgot all about it. You know, what can I say? But what are some of the key teachings that keep you together when you start your day? What are those things that you think about, the teachings of your traditions?
Like what I typically do? Well, that's so broad because I feel like I'm always in it.
Right. I mean, obviously for me, right, I try to try and have respect for everybody I come into, whether or not we're agreeing or not, especially when it comes to spiritual things, right?
Yeah.
If you have a different tradition than me, then, you know, more power to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if I believe you're sincere and your intentions are good, right? But you're dealing with a lot of people that may come into the program. They maybe ask a better question.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
How do the folks that come into your organization, let's say they don't have a lot of belief, you know, what are the things that help them come to believe? I mean, because you're around other people. I mean, what is it? You see something, you see a behavior in people, you see a group of people that follow teachings, you go, I respect that. I want to be like that. I mean, because when you're at the front door sometimes, it's kind of tough.
It is. You know? So typically, like with a person, so a lot of the problem is with us, we have an identity issue when we come in, you know, whether or not if it's because we come into agreement with beliefs of like unworthiness, or I'm not good enough, or I stick out, I don't belong, I have
none
no
of us
purpose.
in recovery ever felt that way, right?
So people come in with that, you know, and I don't want to say like I see it physically because it's not always physically. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I can look at somebody and know, you know, that there's a particular brokenness in you.
Right. Suffering is easy to see for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know why that is? Because we know what it feels like to suffer.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So for myself though, like daily, like one of my things really is just to kind of get out of my own way. You know what I mean? Like I just want to be a channel of God's peace. I want to do His work, you know, however that might look. I let Him lead me and guide me. There's a lot of things that I stick to as far as like teachings. I do thoroughly believe in like speaking the word of God over myself.
Right.
You know, I did have identity issues. So there's things that I say like I am the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. You know what I mean? I'm above and not beneath. He makes me the head and not the tail. I am blessed with all of the spiritual blessings.
I've heard you do this.
Right. I'm a partaker in His divine nature.
I watched you do it from a podium.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you quieted a room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe in that, you know, because I know that the things that the world had spoke to me and things other people had spoke to me to try to tell me what my identity was weren't bearing any fruit. They were leading me down a path of death. And what it was that God had for me, I wanted.
Right.
You know, so however I needed to do, whatever I needed to do, I did it.
Right. You're preaching, sister. I feel it.
And
you ever consider the ministry?
I do. I am. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do messages.
I can feel that from you. It's coming right through. Maybe you're supposed to do that, you know? Maybe this is the moment you look back and go,
this is a confirmation moment.
That guy with the hat and the glasses.
Absolutely.
That's when I knew.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Because I feel it from you. It's as clear as can be.
Yeah.
I see it all around you.
It's a nice little spiritual experience, ain't it?
All around you. You're preaching, sister.
Yes.
Well, I think people need that. You know,
they do.
Because what's the one thing that we can always do for someone? You know, we can always lift them up, right?
Encouragement.
Always lift them up. And they're the ones that need it the most, the ones that are hurting, the ones that are mean, the ones that make little snide remarks, the ones that are maybe criticizing you from the side.
Right.
What's the one thing they all want? They all want to be lifted up.
Right,
you know,
absolutely.
Because they all need that.
Yeah, we'll pick you up. I'll dust you off.
Right.
I'll tell you who you are.
Right.
Let me show you.
Speaking words of kindness, too, and using honesty with a measure of kindness. I think that's another thing that I think that those of us in the tradition of really, really digging deep into the spiritual aspect of recovery, we always remember that no matter what the message is, it's always better served with kindness.
Yeah, amen.
Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely.
You know? So, I mean, I just, you know, faith-based traditions, I was doing some research, especially as it has to do with you're talking about the ministry. I'm talking about some of the traditions that I've been around and seeing that, in congregations, one of the things that's most difficult for a lot of pastors to realize is that out of 100 parishioners they may have, there might be 20% of them who are suffering from mental health issues.
Yeah.
Those are the statistics from SAMHSA.
Yeah.
Could be 21 in 5 are struggling in the congregations. The people we serve, whether you want to call it your ministry, your congregation, your tribe. I use the word bandmates. I use all kinds of stuff being a musician. But pretty much 1 out of every 5 people are struggling with some mental health issues. And of those 1 in 5, only 8% get help.
Yeah.
And almost 4 of them, 4 out of 100 people we may meet in our tribes are going to have long-term struggles with mental health and may not get well. 4 of those. And how do we reach out and grab those? I think about that a great deal when we're talking to people. We were talking about an experience I had yesterday doing some service work and seeing a person that is obviously, you can see it, and you can see it all over the face, right? You can see the pain and the hurt and the suffering. And, and those are long-term problems that we may or may not be able to help and solve, So, I guess what we can always do, in the notes that I made here, is we can always share our stories in faith.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever your faith tradition is, whether it's yours, whether it's mine, as long as it's delivered with warm-heartedness, kindness, and love, and we can always, work hard in our communities to reduce that stigma.
Yeah, you got to slay the stigma.
Because I think one of the things that I hear, especially among peer supporters, the most difficult thing they have to communicate to and I'm going to use this word, non-believers of people in recovery from substance use disorder or mental health issues, is that there is really an illness or a disorder going on there.
Absolutely.
Most people think it's behavioral. You're just not, you're not following life.
Yeah.
If you would just, if you could just, why don't you go get a job?
Yeah.
Right? If you just got a job, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Don't
now
you
you're
understand
minimizing
it's work?
the human being.
It's work.
Yeah.
It's work.
Yeah,
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? Right? Because, you need to be an earner.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you may not realize, I can't be an earner because I can't leave my room because I'm paralyzed with depression.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Or fear. And there's so many things. Right.
Do you see those people in your program?
Absolutely.
How do you help them?
Absolutely.
How do you help them?
Well, if they're within our scope of practice, then they stay within us.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we usually refer people out for any type of psychiatric care medications.
Right.
But it's the same thing. It's just love and kindness and caring and talking about it, know, and not sweeping it under the rug and believing the stigmas,
Right.
Just because you have mental health doesn't mean that, I'm going to scream, whatever it is that you have, because the whole world needs to know.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because when I first came into a program of recovery, I was involved in a STEP program, and I encountered some, and we all did, right? Some of the maybe more the old timer hardliners that believed that just reading a book and believing in a higher power was enough for me. I really struggled with mental health issues, you know what I mean? And there was no amount of reading or believing at that point until I was able to cope with some working out and working through with professional help. And I tell people, you break your arm, you go to a doctor, and you be there in 30 minutes.
Right.
You're like, oh my God, but your heart is broken, your head is broken. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we have to encourage people, especially in the rooms or in your practice, we have to encourage people that there's no stigma.
Oh God, please,
with going and getting and saying, hey, today I couldn't get out of my room again. That's not okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
It's okay to not be okay. And if we can work together, especially in some of the work that you do and some of the work that I do in a much smaller level, to let people know that you know what I mean, that it's the stigma that is the only thing separating us from the people who believe and don't believe. And so how do you address that when you talk to people about stigma? Because I'm sure they tell you stories about, I'm here, but boy, my family, when my family's going to come visit, or when I talk to my family, they're not going to understand. They're not going to get it. What are the things that you say to help those people?
Well, typically, usually with things like that, it's because we believe a lie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We believe a lie. So we kind of address the lie, even individually, because I do counseling, and then I also teach IOP. But even we do almost a whole week on barriers and stigmas and what we're really in recovery from. Because most of the time, yes, I understand I have mental illness. I'm in recovery from that, but I need to recover from the things that the world has told me that I am.
Right.
Or what my family has told me that I am.
The stories in my head.
Right. So if I can build up who you are on the inside, when your family comes knocking and whatever words or stones they might have to throw, you're able to withstand that.
Right.
And that's what I can do.
Do role playing sometime with
in
clients?
IOP?
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
I know, right?
Oh yeah.
I used to hate
we do
that.
All that. I know, but it's so beneficial. It used to make me cringe.
Hate. But then when I did it, I was like, okay, it wasn't that terrible.
Yep.
And then it was like doing push-ups, right? It's the first one.
Yep. It's repetition.
It's the first one.
It's repetition.
That first push-up that every morning when I hit the floor, I'm like, I don't want to do it. But that's really what it is.
It really is.
Is overcoming that ability.
It is.
In art and in writing, we call it the art of resistance, right? Mm-hmm. The hardest part for me being a writer isn't the writing. It's the sitting down to write because I got to get a cup of coffee first. I got to let Martin the dog out, and then I forget the text, and they got to thing. I have a shirt on my head. That's not it.
Yeah,
it's sitting down to write because once I do the work, sit down to do the work, it's there.
Yeah,
but it's that art of resistance. This is who comes up.
Yes,
this is great. I mean, there's some stuff coming up, right? We want to talk about.
Recovery Fest.
This is Recovery Fest. You can see our camera here, folks. You can see this. So tell us a little bit about your event. I mean, obviously, you're involved. There's a lot of people that are involved in these events, and it's always funny to me when people come to see me or my band play. They're saying, "Oh, you do so much." I'm like, "Yeah, let me introduce you to the people that really do the work."
Yes, there's a whole team.
Because I get to walk on and be Mr. Rockstar Boy and play the guitar and sing. But no. That's not how it happens. How it happens is a lot of people get together with a lot of planning and a lot of hard work and a lot of sweaty days.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your event, because I was there last year and I sweated.
It's pretty good size. I think we usually have an average about 600 people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We have like food trucks, inflatables for kids, and like the amount of resources. I can't remember if it was 60-something or 80-something resources, and it's everything that you can think of in the community and even in some of the adjoining counties. Everything from substance use disorder, treatment facilities, to community resources, to resources for kids. And then, of course, we have a couple speakers that will come. They'll give their story.
Right.
And then we have like live music. That this year it's the Community of Christ worship team.
That's awesome.
Which, oh my gosh,
right.
Yeah, we really are. I'm not even trying to toot our own horn, but we're pretty cool.
Right. You sing? Do you sing too?
I do. Absolutely.
I had a feeling we were relating on that level there.
Absolutely.
We could see each other.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
My heart is in it.
The Recovery Fest this year is the 5th of August, but this is a yearly event.
Yes, it's yearly.
So if you happen to be listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video, then you could go online at
arcrecoveryservices.com.
Okay, say that one more time. One more time. Arc
Recovery Services. Yep, Google it. You'll find us.
That's cool.
Yep.
And so it's a free event. Is that what's
happening?
It
is
there?
100% free.
And
absolutely, 100% free.
And just to remind everybody, there's going to be live music, food trucks, recovery tables, speakers, inflatables. I want inflatables. I like inflatables.
Oh, it's a whole course.
I don't want to blow them up, though. Okay. But this year is called Capture the Moment Recovery Fest 2022. I just want to tell our listeners, I'm so deeply honored that you came to spend your time with me today, because, in a lot of ways, and it's often what I tell a lot of our podcast guests is, you just never know when you're helping somebody. You just never know. And it's almost always somebody comes up to me, and says, hey, I was listening to that podcast. And then, of course, I go into a bliss, like, which one was it? Which one was it?
Right.
But they said, when I heard your guest say this, when I heard you say that made me think this. I did, because.
Yes.
And I think sometimes those are the most powerful words, So, thanks again. We were talking to Angelica Angel Nichols, who is an LPN, CDCA, and OCPS. That's awesome. And she's also clinical coordinator at ARC Recovery Services. From the bottom of my heart and from all our listeners, thank you for coming here today.
Appreciate you. It's an honor.
So if you're listening out there, just make sure that you can find us at all the places you can normally find us. You can find Recovery Talks, the podcast, at recoverytalksthepodcast.org, recoverytalks.org. And remember that the most important thing for all of us out there is to stay standing, stay connected, and steady on. Thanks again.
Thank you.